21-year-old Elena could have never imagined that when she confided in her mother about concerns of a college roommate sending nudes, it would destroy their relationship. Elena tells Marie Claire on October 30th, 2019. She started yelling at me and asking me if I had done the same. When I said no, she took me to the doctor and forced them to give me a virginity test. Elena describes it as the most traumatizing experience in her life, which sadly isn't surprising. Because Vox on December 3rd, 2019 reveals that virginity tests are performed by inserting 2 fingers into the vagina to check for a rip or tear of the hymen, a rather painful procedure that isn't even medically viable. CNN on November 11th, 2019 further elaborates. Women in communities that place virginity on a pedestal will go to extreme lengths, such as fake tests or fake blood on their wedding night. Let's get one thing straight. Virginity is an outdated and misogynistic ideology that has done far more harm than good. And virginity testing is just another remaining vestige of the patriarchy that needs to be banned. Given that the World Health Organization claims that virginity test is a violation of basic human rights and has called for its elimination since 2018. Given that NPR on December 6, 2019 reveals that virginity tests are documented in at least 20 countries and are still spreading as a practice, we must examine the causes, effects, and solutions because virginity tests are not medically helpful. They're a widespread form of medical sexual assault. It would be remiss not to mention the story of the rapper T.I. taking his daughter to get a virginity test every year after her birthday. The story caused an outrage on the internet, but also a discussion on the harms of virginity tests, leading to our 2 main causes: sexual purity and lack of framework. To begin, we've historically placed sexual purity on a pedestal. During the Cold War era, society began seeing sexual behavior for pleasure rather than just procreation, in response to the potential apocalypse. The Medium on May 26, 2020 explains, the church became so fearful, it launched a nationwide effort to reinforce strict moral purity codes. Dr. Sarah Mosliner in her book Virgin Nation explains, the church made a woman's virginity a prize to be won, often making it a contingency for marriage. By placing the sole burden of virginity on women, the church fanned the flames of the patriarchy. In other words, the ideas of virginity and sexual purity became forms of gender discrimination that allowed for tests like virginity tests to become a dangerous reality. And within our current political turmoil, it's no surprise that the first people we blame are women, giving new life to this abhorrent practice. Next, doctors feel like they can't refuse virginity tests. Times on April 11th, 2019 explains that there are no state laws or medical practices to help doctors navigate these situations. In other words, there is no framework for how to handle or better yet refuse virginity tests. The Hastings Center on January 13th, 2020 explains that from an ethical and medical standpoint, doctors should flat out refuse to perform virginity tests. However, the parents are the legal guardians of these minors, presenting a particular legal impasse. If they refuse, doctors can be placed under scrutiny. Dr. Walters tells Vice on August 16th, 2020, their office received multiple death threats for refusing to perform virginity tests. Doctors don't want women undergoing these procedures, but if they don't have the legal infrastructure helping them say no, they will continue to persist. Dr. Heather Roop still remembers the first time she was asked to perform a virginity test. Angry mothers and anxious daughters became a recurring theme in her office, leading to our 2 effects: lasting trauma and quick fixes. First, virginity tests leave individuals with a staggering amount of trauma. CNN on November 9th, 2019 posits, these tests create a plethora of guilt, depression, anxiety, and body image issue disorders. For example, B. a woman who wishes to remain anonymous, and a mother who placed virginity on a pedestal. So when B got a UTI, her mother was convinced she was sexually active. So an 11-year-old was forced to undergo a virginity test. Even though B passed the test, she still describes it as rape by instrument, weird, and torture. B's experience caused her to never want to see a doctor again. So when she was sexually assaulted not just 2 years after, she didn't seek help. B's story is the story of so many. The lasting physical and psychological trauma of these tests stick with individuals throughout their entire lives, silencing and damaging them more than a broken hymen ever could. Next, we've created harmful quick fixes to virginity tests. The Guardian on February 16, 2020 explains that doctors and women's rights activists have created ways to fake virginity tests. Doctors will fake the exam, perform risky revirgination surgeries, and most popularly, you can purchase an artificial virginity test kit, which include fake hymens and blood pills. Unfortunately, Dr. Sandra Crosby notes in her 2020 British Medical Journal on Global Health that faking the test only encourages guardians to come back for more. Blood pills contain toxic chemicals that can cause infection, and revirgination surgeries require undergoing anesthesia, which is always a risk. Without legal framework, these clandestine quick fixes only serve to vilify and reinforce the harmful ideals of virginity, creating a vicious cycle that continues to place women in harm's way. B has never met another person willing to talk about their experience, making her feel isolated. When in reality, this is a dangerous practice that crosses borders and cultures, making it imperative that we implement solutions. Raising awareness and banning the test. First, let's raise awareness. The Cut on November 7th, 2019 explains, we need to educate women on the fraudulence of virginity and the harms of sexual purity. So I've created an awareness campaign called the Purity Sham. The campaign seeks to challenge myths surrounding virginity and harmful gender norms that place an emphasis on the control of bodies and sexuality on a global scale. Visit the link in the chat where you can learn more about the campaign, find a sex ed curriculum debunking myths surrounding virginity tests, and dozens of resources. Share what you find on the website with your friends, and help me dismantle this long, dark history of purity culture and virginity tests. Finally, let's ban virginity tests. The New York Times on December 3rd, 2019 explains, state legislatures are working on a bill that would make virginity testing illegal. So let's help get New York's bill into every state legislature. In the same link, you can find a packet, including a letter to your state representative, sample bill, testimonies, and studies debunking this outdated medical practice. Simply fill out your information, and I'll send everything for you. This legislation not only outright stops virginity tests from happening, but gives doctors the legal infrastructure to say no and direct their patients into other resources for care. Today, we examine the causes, effects, and solutions to the heinous act of virginity tests. To this day, Elena will never tell her mother another personal thing. Elena, B, and so many others have suffered unnecessary and violent trauma for an ideal that should have never even existed in the first